Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is MTG Ghoul Dude, and today we're going to continue the trend because the last one did actually pretty well, better than a little bit more than I expected it to. So this time we're going to be looking at those pesky things that are probably one of the hardest things to get rid of, and depending on the colors you're playing, especially if you're playing black and or red. I mean, you got your Chaos Warp effects, you got your, all these different colors. Most of the time, you're playing two color decks, unless you're one of those weird people like me that like to play monocolor decks. Well, these might get under your skin, these might not. So let's go on ahead. We're going to be covering some of the more of those enchantments that are just like, as soon as they hit the battlefield, they're going to be a pain. They're going to be just a headache to deal with. So we're going to come out strong and start with probably one of the weirdest and most game-breaking cards in the format, and that is Omniscience. If you've never played this card, if you've never heard of this card, this is a 10 mana enchantment that says you may cast spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. Now, I'm not going to rag on this card too much because guess what? This card does everything. I mean, if you have a draw engine that's better than a 1970s Chevrolet motor that's still kicking, then you might be a little bit too powerful. And this card is probably right up your alley. But for a card like this is just a win more card for me. I mean, if you're able to pay for a 10 mana enchantment and get it to stick, or if you really fought for it to stick, you kind of deserve to play, just go on ahead and just auto win Magic at that point. But like I said, this is a 10 mana enchantment. This is just ungodly amounts of mana to try and just pay all at once for an enchantment that, maybe later on, if you don't have any cards in hand, it's kind of a dud. But let's move on to the next one. Rhystic Study. We all know it. We all hate it or love it, depending on which side of the study you're on. This is an enchantment for 2 and a blue that says whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1, which has now uttered the most recognizable phrase besides the next card, one of the next few cards that we're going to see. Are you going to pay the 1? Which, in a lot of my play groups, and if anybody plays a Rhystic Study, it's pretty much just, nobody pays their taxes. Except for most of the time me, who is the most law-abiding player at the game. But if it looks like in the end, if the Rhystic Study player is going to get nothing out of it, I'll go on ahead and throw it in there. I'll just go on ahead and just let go of my hand like it's on fire. But, this is a good value engine piece if you can constantly keep your opponents, casting spells, or if you're in a very proactive meta. This is a very good piece if you're looking to try and, edge up on the card draw a little bit. And this is the one that has now the synonymous with the are you going to pay the 2? Smothering Tithe for 3 and a white. This is an enchantment whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. It's a may. If the player doesn't, you create a treasure. Now, I probably don't have to tell a lot of you how far and how fast this gets out of hand. And just could just very well take over a game, especially if you're playing against a deck that likes to wheel. Or just have a Teferi's puzzle box and now everybody draws 7 out of nowhere. But this is just like Rhystic Study, this is a good mana accelerant if you're looking to try and, just go a little bit faster. And you're just like a Rhystic Study, if your opponents don't like to pay their taxes, guess what? You're about to hit the lottery. Almost quite literally, some places. Moving on, if you thought somebody taxing you for your spells and somebody taxing you for your draws was bad, just imagine if you don't have everything comes in tapped. Your artifacts and your lands. All of your acceleration goes down the drain. I'm going to be fair and I'm going to be honest. I have this card in a deck. I have this in my Greta food deck which is a kind of like a food chain deck. And I put it in there to try and slow down all those faster, kind of grindier, competitive decks. And this is just great because, artifacts and lands are the lifeblood of a game. If you can, stall somebody out a turn, if you're first in the turn order and the first thing you play is a some kind of green land and root maze, guess what? You got to take advantage of having at least having an untapped land first. But if you're this is one of those cards you play if you know you're in a very fast aggro meta, if you're looking to try and, maybe just slow the game down just a little bit. And, use all these cards responsibly because, just like the commanders, you can put a target on your back if your opponents have no other way to interact with this besides taking you out of the game. And if you thought not being able to have your lands come in untapped is bad, just imagine if you're playing a non-red deck and all of your non-basics become mountains. That's pretty wild. Like, I mean, kudos to the mono red deck over there in the corner, but, this could definitely just warp a game into a one-sided mess. And I mean, just like all the rest of these cards, if you're looking to try and, do a little bit of slowing down, these are definitely, some useful things to have. But, Blood Moon it's a card that is competitive in other formats, more so in like modern and so on and so on. I mean, I even think there's like a red prison deck, which is pretty wild if you think about it. But if you didn't care if your basic lands were mountains, what about if they didn't even produce what they're supposed to produce? Let me introduce to you a card all the way back from Ice Age called Reality Twist. For 3 blue, this is an enchantment that says cumulative upkeep 1 and 2 blue. So if you have like a 5-color deck, you can find a way to keep producing blue, this is fine. But here's the thing. It doesn't affect blue. If you look at this card, it says nowhere near anything that says anything about islands. So definitely the mono blue deck is going to be able to try and take advantage of this if this is a card that they can even run because of all the mana pips in it. I wonder if that's actually... I would have to look that up. I didn't look that up beforehand, but now I have to look it up. All right. Yeah, the jury's out. I have no idea. But if you're looking to just convolute a game and just turn it all up on its head, this is a card that you will love to play and regret playing because your play group will eventually just try and knock you out to try and keep this off the board. Because what it says is instead of their normal mana produced, plains produce red, swamps produce green, mountains produce white, and forests produce black. And like I said, it doesn't affect blue. So this really can just take a deck. I mean, if you're playing a Jund deck, then you're really not that out of whack. If you're playing a black, if you're playing any of the shards, this actually kind of benefits you. It kind of flips your mana around a little bit. Because like you're playing Jund, you're still making sort of. So your mountains produce white, your plains produce red, and your forests produce green. Yeah, you're completely messed up because all you have is red left. And your swamps produced... Yeah, you're all kinds of funky because the only colors you would have left would be green and black. So if you're looking to try and, twist and turn, reality twist the table a little bit, have a little fun, this is a great little card to try and throw in for a little chaos. This is not one of those cards to throw in for a little bit of chaos. This is stasis. Stasis is for 1 and a blue. It says players skip their untap steps. Oh, so you know how you were talking about how your lands come in tapped? Well, guess what? They stay tapped. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice stasis unless you play blue. You pay blue. Play blue. I mean, of course you're going to play blue if you're playing stasis, but I have seen so many of these decks not in my past that just run stasis just because. And then I've also seen decks that just utilize artifacts more than they do anything with an unwinding clock that then just takes over the game. But stasis can be a pivotal, like, all right, well, all I did my turn was play a land and then use my artifacts to play stasis. And then I pass the turn. And then everybody else in the turn order now does not have an untap step. And then you can just find a way to win the game some way or another. But if you thought not being able to have your lands was bad, or your creatures to untap, what about if you played a creature and then you had to pay for the creature, or it was gone? It got repoed. It's no longer in this plane of existence. It is now residing within your graveyard. Pendril Mist. For 3 and a blue, this is an enchantment that says each creature gains during your upkeep, pay 1 or bury this creature. And this enchantment doesn't go away whenever there are no creatures left. It just sits there, waiting for another creature to be on the battlefield for you to have to pay for it. And guess what? If you tapped out to play that, and then somebody plays a stasis, guess what? You don't get to keep your creature. Yeah, this is one of those decks that kind of just builds itself to be complete and utter chaos, and you just play it once, it does the thing, and you break it down or retire it forever. Or it becomes just the bane of your playgroup's existence, pretty much. And then we have humility. Okay, you're going to get to keep your creatures, but you're not going to be able to use any of the great things that they have. Pretty much. I mean, humility is a great card. It's probably one of the weirdest looking cards. It kind of reminds me of Banjo-Kazooie or some of those old retro 90s games that had this kind of art style with it. Because humility is an enchantment. For 2 and 2 white, each creature loses all abilities and is a 1/1 creature. Yeah, this is actually kind of bad, especially with the new Maha that just came out. Yeah, this kind of just nerfs, just helps with the Maha decks. I mean, like if you're trying to be a Maha friend advocate, you find a deck and build it around the humility, and there you go. Unless you don't have the money to buy humility, because humility is outrageous. But, besides the fact that, you lose all your abilities and it's just because of a slug out between 1/1s, if you can find a way to get your mana together to, destroy the humility, I mean, then everything's back on. All it is it just nerfs creatures until it's gone. And then we have the thing that nerfs all of your spells until it's gone. This is Possibility Storm. For 3 and 2 red, this is an enchantment that says whenever a player casts a spell from his or her hand, so it doesn't affect your commander if you're playing your commander. That's the only not bad part. Or if you're playing decks like that play from exile, then it kind of helps. But it also, it's a win-lose-win situation, kind of, sort of, because, if you're playing in a certain deck that likes to play from exile, then it's a win. If you're trying to play cards from your hand, it's kind of a lose. But you exile the card that you play, then you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a card that shares a card type with it. So say you exile a Solemn Simulacrum. You can wait until you hit an artifact or a creature, because it's both types. And then you get to cast it without paying its mana cost. I'm not gonna lie, I've had some pretty wild games. The games have swung so hard in different directions. Like the player that was winning is now losing, and the losing player is now like edging up to the forerunner of becoming the next big arch enemy of the table. And then after all the casting is done, you put all the exile cards with Possibility Storm on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's kind of like a Warp World, but worse because it sticks around forever. It's like a Chaos Warp for the spell on the stack. So yeah, do with that information what you must. This is a real fun like include to a chaos deck or to a, exile deck, because you're going to play from exile anyway and you get benefits from exile. So I mean, if you're looking to add a little spice for everybody else to enjoy playing from exile, here you go. And don't you dare put any kind of cards that says they can't play cards from any other places besides their hands, like Draenith Magistrate. That's a no-no. And then we're back to the very beginning. So, what do you guys think about, what do you guys have to say about, certain enchantments that kind of just teeter you over to be like as soon as you see them, that's where the game ends for me. Let me know down in the comments below. And that is going to be pretty much it. I really appreciate everybody that watched the video, that liked the video, that commented on the video, even though we had a few that disgruntled people with my sarcasm when it came to, talking about some of the cards and some of the commanders that but it's all in good fun. It's all satire and appreciation of how somewhat pretty strong that those cards actually are. But that is going to be it for today, and I'll see you guys next time in the graveyard.